I'm not going there.
So the chickens were just a good
Well, it's
thing.
I'm like,
I'm gonna keep my comments HR approved. I did not say anything. All right, I've got 1 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
DeCook,
Here.
McIntyre,
Here.
Heater,
Here.
All right, we have quorum. First on the agenda today is Mr. Bill Ludwig presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Bet.
Bill Ludwig, architect and urban planner, 939 Office Park Road in West Des Moines, Iowa. I've got all these various master plans up, and I guess the two things that are under consideration in the last, say, 30 days here, we've gotten calls from either counties or cities about the COVID relief funds, and so I've got a couple of areas that I'll talk about that. And then just in general, the idea of a whole North Warren County action plan is what I'll call it. But we've done some things in the last couple of years where it's been very beneficial. I might just start with the far corner piece is a area in Lakeside which adjoins Storm Lake, so it's the south part of Storm Lake area. It's in the county, it's Buena Vista County. And we've talked about that family beginning to offer their land, I guess, for development. So we've started master planning. The total plan goes clear to the south. It doesn't show on that map. But as we've done that over about, I'm going to say 3 months, we've gotten builders from Sioux City that want to come in, and we've got other single-family type developers that would like to be a part of it. So we've kind of fashioned an area there, and I'll just point to the one piece of it. Stay above that card. This main road coming in, where you see the red line, is really the first phase. That generates about $18 million in development. And so we've asked for TIP dollars or some cooperation from the county or the city or something, which most of these projects have. And then the COVID idea came up, and they called me and they said, we have a bunch of funds there, and I think it's something like $3.8 million. And that we can spend, he said, on sewer, sanitary sewer trunk lines and so on, and water lines. So I identified a part of the project, which is about $900,000. And I'll just lay those out for the 3 supervisors. But it lays out about $890,000, something like that, or maybe it's $980,000. So they're considering that as a part of they were meeting this past Monday, and they'll be meeting for the next couple of weeks on that. The second project is in Polk County, and that is a huge development of about 400 acres. It's all developed around Toad Valley Golf Course, and we've done Glen Oaks area, we've got Legacy. Legacy is over on this part of the property. The Copper Creek area, so we know how to present single-family houses, townhomes, and so on. So that ends up to be about, if you take the 2 first phases, it's about $63 million in development. And as you would go up toward the north along there, it gets up to as much as $150 million. That'll be the largest project that Polk County has ever done. So again, we're asking for some COVID funds there. They have, I think, $80 or $90 million or something that they have. I don't know what the exact dollars are. So we have trunk sewer, we have stormwater detention, and we've got a kind of a collector road that they think they could participate in. And so again, that's the request that we're going to be making of Polk County. These other projects are ones that started with what I call action planning. This first one, of course, is Prairie Trail, which, a number of years ago, the planning director and the city manager hired me to say, what can we do with about 1,000 acres of development? And we went through a whole bunch of scenarios, had meetings with all kinds of business community and the public in general and so on. Anyway, we came up with the idea of this stuff, Prairie Trail, and it was ultimately between Awa and all the other developed property on Ankeny, and basically Awa won the award. We got into the development of that. Next one over here is Copper Creek and Edgewater. And again, two developments that were simultaneously going on. One was the golf course, one was more of the lake area. And those had maybe $2.5 to $3 million in tax and financing to get those things started, get trunk sewer and that sort of thing. Over here, the legacy area, again, there was a lift station and a trunk sewer that was part of that one, and also a water main that came down through the whole development and serviced the whole development. And again, that was probably in the neighborhood of $75 to $100 million in development growth, and the TIF was about $2 to $2.5 million, something like that. So the things I have here on the table are, and this is one that we've been working on down in Osceola, and I call it an action plan. It's kind of along 35, and it has a whole bunch of different ideas about it. And as a result of this, we have filed now a $1 million tax credit project in this development. We call it the Hub, and that'll become a fairly major business development area. And we've also had another 2 or 3 projects that are going on in this area. I'm going to leave with you copies of this study, because again, I think it's possible that the county would say, yes, let's go ahead and do action planning and begin to say, how can we get development going in this north area, Warren County area. We expect over the next 5 years to have a pretty tremendous amount of growth in the Osceola area. They have an in-migration for work of about 2,800 people every day, and we know that there's demand for housing, whether it be apartments or single family or so on. So all those areas will start to develop those areas. This one again is over down in south area in Indianola, and that's of course Summercrest Hills. We've got about over $70 million worth of development in there over the last 10 years or something like that. And again, there was some TIF dollars that were involved in that. This one is that whole area west of 35, which at the time we were talking about this, and this shows a progression from 2000, where it's basically farm ground, to an area where we've got the interchange in and we've started the development in 2003 or 4, and then up to 2011. So over about 11-year period, tremendous amount of growth. Now the city told us west of 35 it's basically single-family housing, and we said, wouldn't you consider something? So we spent about 1.5 years, 2 years talking about a village center and so on. Well, as a result of it, general growth came in, and just almost every major commercial development in the country has come in and developed their hotels, restaurants, everything. So here's the master planning that was done for those areas, the Glen Oaks, the Ponderosa, and Galleria, and so on. So, again, not to take too much of your time, but I wanted to just get into the Warren County area and give you some idea of what I might be thinking about. Where's the best place to put this? Maybe right here, right there?
Right there would be great, Bill.
So here you've got everything, I guess, south of Highway 5, which basically cuts across this way. You've got 35 coming down, you've got 69 coming down, you've got 34 across, and my thought is there's at least a dozen projects that could be kind of initiated here. And when I say Warren County, I'm really talking about Warren County, I'm talking about Carlisle, I'm talking about Norwalk, Cumming, this home show is underway right now with the agri and all that. So my thought is that all of these areas are possible expansions into that whole Warren County area. And it seems to me, if you take the lead, especially if you have COVID type funds available, or even just to initiate it, I think Polk County is doing this in a lot of different ways, whether it's up into the Ankeny area or Altoona area. they're trying to find ways to work with cities to really make projects work and develop. And that's my thought here. The Carlisle could definitely be a huge growth area, just as much as Waukee or Cumming or any of the other areas that we think of. Scotts Ridge Road, probably some things could happen there. There's been talk about an interchange. Should that be considered? Should Polk County, Warren County, Des Moines, all kind of join in that idea? Carlisle, obviously, because it's the front door of Carlisle. Norwalk, to the south area of Norwalk, is that something that is starting to go? And again, could there be some cooperation with Warren County? And all of these things might need sewer, water, they might need changes in the traffic patterns, maybe add a turning lane, whatever those things might be. West Des Moines is going west just as far as you can almost go. And of course, there'll be a new interchange here shortly that can continue to pull people to the west. But again, I think just areas like Martinsdale, where you're just around the corner and you're up into the whole Des Moines, West Des Moines area. Indianola, that has a connection up going north. They've got a 15-minute ride or so to the whole town center area. All of these have potential. And I guess my question to you is, would you like to begin to think about an action plan that starts to pull these things together and basically start to decide on a lot of these things? If we would get into it, like in the case of the Osceola project, we had an awful lot of meetings. We culminated that study with an all-day session on Friday, and it was about the 1st of November. I can't remember exactly. It was a year and a half, 2 years, about a year and a half ago. And I had as my keynote speaker Deb Durham from the state to kind of tell about the incentives that they are capable of working on. But anyway, we had early planning sessions, Deb Durham in the center area, and then followed up. And each one worked on different parts of it. So you had the county, you had the city, and you had the whole business community were part of that. That's what I'd like to see you consider doing, to set up this idea. I know that we're going to get cooperation from Carlisle, from Norwalk, from all the areas that we deal with. And probably a third of these projects are in Warren County that we've been working on over the years. And so I think there's so much that comes out of these that it'd be a shame not to take advantage of that. I'm going to leave these with you. This is one that we did for Cumming, and of course now we've got the aggregate going. But with that one, we put a whole series of landowners, with developers, with planners and so on to say what can be done on land. And then, of course, the Norwalk project, which really has probably done about $1 billion worth of work now, if you think of all those areas. And then there's the aggregate development there. So I know it's a lot of information, a lot of ideas thrown out, but I guess I'd like you to think about it. And if you want to have another work session where we can spend quite a lot of time going into more detail, we're more than willing to do that. Questions on this at all?
Sure, I just wanted to tell you, Bill, I appreciate you. I just wanted to get you here before the board because it didn't work out, but I've spoken to you on something else regarding a church in Norwalk, and so I just appreciate quality people. I think that that's you, and I know that you've got a lot of things in the works, evidenced by literally billions of dollars of development, and so you're not starting out and hoping for pie in the sky numbers. Like you've done it. Glen Oaks is immaculate. The legacy in Norwalk I'm very familiar with, and some of your other projects I am, and some I'm learning about. But what I wanted the board to start thinking about as we look at some of the COVID dollars that are coming for infrastructure, that's sewer, that's maybe broadband, some other things. Like my goal, at least with part of the money, is to get a good return on investment. And I value return on investment as in what are we adding with those dollars, or how are we leveraging those dollars to get maybe to spur a development that might not otherwise come. And so like Carlisle, for example, or that spot just to the left of the Carlisle Circle, all of that area of Highway 5, I drive that all the time. Anytime I go to eastern Iowa or I go to Pella, I take Highway 5 around the bypass and then go on 163 down, or I go to 80. And it's to the south, it is farms. It is trees and corn. And it is so darn close to Polk County. And I just look with envy at Bondurant and Altoona and some of their commercial developments especially. And I understand the sort of revenue that that generates for those communities. And so it would be my hope to have some dollars put to work. And I do concede that it'll probably be on the northern part of the county, but some of the dollars, I think having an industrial park, some commercial, or some highly tax value positive construction going on somewhere would make a whole lot of sense long term. Something that people could look back on in 10 or 15 years and say, oh yeah. For example, the Microsoft data center that came in, that is literally covering 1/10 of our bond repayment on our courthouse justice center. 1 out of $10 comes from Microsoft data center. That is phenomenal. They are not using additional resources. They are not educating more children. They are not using our sheriff's department more, or our county attorney's office more, our recorder, or our treasurer. They are a net humongous contributor for our county. And it would be appealing to me to have some additional commercial or light industrial development. But I also think that just due to the proximity of Des Moines, that north corridor is probably ripe to develop additional dollars. And so some mixture of residential and all of it makes sense. But I would be very inclined to look at anything that generates sort of between Cumming and Carlisle on that Highway 5, anything that would generate some industrial or commercial tax-based generation.
We've got developers we're working with out of Sioux City, out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And we've placed them in Altoona, we've placed them in Milwaukee, we've placed them in Norwalk, right along the east-west street across there. They're the type of people that if you had an action plan and you said, oh, wait a minute, this is not just farmland out there. Because really, as you drive, I drive this constantly.
Very true.
And what do I see? I see just the opportunity. And it's more a matter of saying, show me a kind of a roadmap. And I think any one of these guys who are looking for markets, and if they can be early in the market, in the whole Carlisle area, great schools. I mean, there's no reason not to be expanding. And it's more a matter of saying, this is what the opportunity could be. They can't do it themselves. They'll come in, they'll buy 30 or 40 acres and try to do it themselves. It's really got to be a joint effort of the county, the city, and a number of different developers. A hotel guy is different from an apartment guy, is different from a commercial strip center type guy. And when you start to put them all together, like in the Jordan Creek area, or even here, this is a good example. Every kind of land use you can imagine in Summercrest Hills. And we just said, yeah, Matt, well, yeah, come on in, let's see what we can do. So the idea is not new, and we know what works and what doesn't work, and it's really a matter of saying, how do we get this kind of tied together? Takes landowners, takes a lot of meetings with builder developers to say, no, this isn't the Carlisle, or the Norwalk area that you know. This is different. This is going to be something.
I just think I want to look back in like 15 or 20 years and see that we were good stewards with some of these resources. Like I want to see the return on it. I mean, that's my motive. I'll be honest.
Well, and as we do these plans, if I'm asking for a couple $1 million or whatever it is, in the case of Glen Oaks, $3.5 million, what, to go out and build a country club for millionaires? No, that's not what it was about. It was about dragging sewer across West Des Moines from 35th Street under the interstate, hooking up projects we had already done with dry sewer. And so, I mean, I've got to show you why it makes sense for you.
No, I get it. Just for example, with the board, I worked with Mr. Ludwig a year and a half ago on feasibility of bringing sewer from Polk County across Highway 5 and up a big hill. And that hill it's primo. It touches Fleur, or what turns out to be Fleur, south of the airport, a beautiful view of Des Moines, and it opens up into some of the northern part of Norwalk that's just not developable because no one wants to bring sewer over or the lift station. So it's really expensive farm ground with the hopes that someday maybe it becomes something different. And it didn't work out, but in large part that's why some of those areas are not developable, because the sewer is on the north side of Highway 5. And without that infrastructure, you can't get a Michael's Foods or a Windsor Windows or a data plant or a data center or whatever. And I'm just here to tell you that those things in time, even with maybe some TIF or maybe you'd have some negotiations, but in time those really work out to be pretty net positives for the county. And so my focus, as long as I'm here, is to work on, not with all of it, because I think you gotta do a little bit of everything, but with some of it, I want to be targeted and I want to be specific on where do you want to be in 20 years or 10 years, and not tomorrow or the next day, but what sort of growth do you want? What sort of tax base do you want? And how can we help ourselves over the long haul? And that's going to involve some development, in my mind.
I've seen a real change at Polk County in terms of getting out in front and having some leadership toward development. Obviously, this one that we're talking about at Manitoba Valley is incredible.
And I've worked with Eric before from Polk County, and I don't know this, but I think that it would be possible that the Polk County Board of Supervisors would at least entertain some sort of a joint project, because effectively, as you add these players together, splitting that pot up with a few more heavy hitters probably matters. And so there might be, I don't know this, but Bill knows them as well, that there might be some sort of an opportunity to do some joint project between Polk and Warren on that north corridor, so that we split the cost of some of the infrastructure, but we also will then very likely split some tax revenue with them. But that might be a net positive as well, to get more bang for your buck.
Yeah, I think the opportunity is there, and it's really a matter of saying how do we capture it. Coming is going to be, I mean, it's already, the plans are in place, you'll see by some of those drawings in that will probably become the next Waukee, or not Waukee, but Bondo Range or Alpine and so on. We're just going to see a tremendous growth there.
Cumming has a big plan in zoning this week on a large development right on the interstate, so
yeah,
we'll see how that goes, but I'm hopeful.
And as I say, schools, I think they're part of the Norwalk School District, very good.
They are.
I was happy with that, and it's really a matter of filling in the blanks, I think.
Do you guys have any questions for him? We're not taking any action or anything today, but I just literally wanted to get the wheels spinning a little bit on, I know that we want to maybe look at a committee as well, and that's fine, but I just wanted to get people thinking about it, because there's, in my mind, there's some real opportunity to do long-term good for the county. And I would hate to squander that opportunity, especially if Polk would be interested in joining on something, or if there's something that we can get a really high return on investment over time on. That makes sense, because that pays the bills for everything else. So
Take a good look at the OCO, because that's one where you've got Park County Development Corporation, Supervisors, and OCO. And there's just ideas coming up from every angle. We end up going down to the town center, all kinds of different things. So we'll have full projects starting probably in the fall or in the spring this next year. They've come out of those studies. So.
Were they able to use their COVID money?
Yeah, haven't done anything really down there. So
Nothing on COVID. Yeah. But I think it's a great presentation. It's really a good, we really need to start thinking in terms of the magnitude of what we're doing. These opportunities come around very rarely, and my first reaction is how does commercial development and infrastructure and sewer and all that fit with the COVID requirements? I don't know, like if it's, I know there's an infrastructure element in that, but I think this type of project and this type of development would be wonderful for our county, and I hope there is something we come up with that.
You know, now that I think about it, you're gonna have, it sounds like a whole bunch of maybe $1 trillion worth of infrastructure funds that are kind of flowing in, and why not be ready there? Got a place here for one, got a place over there.
Yeah.
Be prepared for it, because I think that's coming. Frankly, even at the state level, we have got all kinds of things out of IDOT. Obviously, the civic interchange, we did the 86 Street, the one out in Waukee, Grand Prairie. They'll cooperate with you, and like I say, if there ought to be an interchange here, now's the time to start. It's 5 years away, but if it's not vetted, you know, if we had not said to IDOT that this could become Civic Park, right, they wouldn't even talk to you. I mean, you would have got to say, this is the way we're going to try to do it.
So your company does the planning aspects
Yeah.
of these things, and then where does your...
We
where
try
does
to pull together all the money for it, the developers, the landowners.
Okay.
We try to pull everybody together. In the case of Jordan Creek area, we had the Wittern family, of course, Gary Kirk and Bill Van Worsdale. We had the Ponderosa golf course people. So all of these people were invested early. And of course, the developers flocked in. Once the developers, a guy like Bill Knapp, or in the case of the Wittern thing, the rest of it follows. When I first went to Las Vegas for the commercial shopping center, it's once a year, I said we're on 30 or 35 going south and we're on 80 going west. They went out there and they said, we don't see anything, we just see a farmland. What are you talking about? And I said, no, we have the commitments from West Des Moines. And if general growth, which it turned out, we were talking to DeBartolo, we were talking to Simons, all the major developers. They have committed that they will make it the connection to I-35, I-80, which they did. They did exactly what they said they would do. And I mean, everybody followed. And everybody brought their best game. You know, the hotel people, the apartment people from Tulsa, from all over. There's Chicago group that is doing 500 apartments out there. I mean, it is just unbelievable. But anyway, I think once you've got the roadmap and then you started to assemble where's the land, the developers and so on, it isn't evident, you know, it isn't obviously, it isn't, you know, it doesn't necessarily happen, but 99% of the time it will. So.
But to have a plan never hurts you, because there will be opportunities, whether it's today or
Yeah.
whether it's 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Really understand how you want to grow.
Well, the other issue with it, Darren, is that we're not special or unique in that we're gonna have some resources to put forth towards infrastructure. You don't exactly wanna be the last person to that game to get your plan together or to get some ideas together, because there's still a finite amount of dollars out there. So they're gonna go to where it's teed up. I mean,
Yeah.
when Norwalk did Windsor Windows and Michael Foods, it's because they did all of the site work,
Yeah.
they did all of the planning in advance. They said, we have a legitimate shovel-ready project for huge commercial. And then they pitch it to people, and then they fill it up, and now millions of dollars of extra valuation are on the tax roll. If you don't have some of those ducks in a row beforehand, and I'm not saying with all of it, but with some of it, if you don't have those ducks in a row, then you know you're gonna get scooped by Marion County, who doesn't split our receipts very well historically, or some other place that's gonna have their stuff ready to go. So I just wanted to get that a little bit in front of you and sort of light the fire a bit, because I think there's some really good things that can happen, and not just because my district includes half of that northern corridor, but because I think it'd be good for the county. So.
Great.
Appreciate you guys taking time, and I'll leave this stuff for now and come back and get it later, but I'll just wait later for you. I'm available almost any time. I'm eager to get going on something.
your time.
Thank you much.
Yeah, you bet. Really good. You bet.
All right, number 2 on the agenda today is consider language for ballot for 5-member board with possible action. I have Dawn.
So Doug had asked me to put together some language that the state, Secretary of State's office could approve for a ballot proposition. The very first one you see is a very simple one. It has been used and approved by the Secretary of State. It was used by, I believe it was Lynn County. The second one is just another version of the same language with gives more credit to those who would be voting for it, those who want representation from 5 rather than 3 supervisors. And frankly, I like the second option better, but that's a you choice, not a me choice. On the last page, there is a timeline, and it would have to, so the date of the next general election is November 8th, and this ballot language, this proposition ballot language, would appear on that ballot. And then you just follow the timeline down, and we end up with, if the county residents vote for increasing the board from 3 to 5 members, then you end up with new board members taking office January 2nd, 2025.
And did we have some discussion on the sort of plan? I know that Warren County's under single rep or like
So,
by population split up.
so Warren County presently uses what's called Plan 3 within the Code of Iowa. And that is single member equal population districts. So that's the language that gets used. The county is divided into 3 districts, and they have more or less equal population. It has to be very close in numbers, and equal population basis. So you could do a similar plan, and that is something that the board can consider offering on a different ballot. The board can ask that the citizens come forward with a petition as to what they would want. You can do, either of those things can be done to deal with what kind of board representation.
Can we now have that on the November 22 ballot, the sort of plan that we would propose as well? Because I think that by population makes sense. That way you have equal districts. I don't know what else you do. At large, I suppose, or some variation of at large.
Yes, at large is definitely one of the options. Excuse me. I don't want to say for sure you can do it on the same ballot until I look at that again, but it may be possible. You're asking for two things to be considered at the same time. You're asking for a really big consideration when you go from 3 to 5. And then you're asking also, how do you want your representation to be formatted? So I'm not saying it can't be done, I'm saying I need to look at that again.
It's a good question. Once you decide you want to, go on, sir, Kristen.
No,
Did you-
I just know that Sharon has been the election.
Oh,
I don't know if that's a possibility, because we've never had to look at it.
We're in the weeds on this one.
Okay.
well, I was just gonna say that's a big question on how all that lays out. You know, how do we structure the way we want to structure, and how do our people become represented the way we think, you know, and by going to 5, it's all well and good, but then how do we, then we redistrict. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into this, and then how do you make your districts? I actually like the idea of at-large, having at-large representatives, just from the perspective of, you care about the entire county. There's contingency on your board that think in terms of the entire county. They're not thinking about just Norwalk or just Indianola or just Carlisle. They have the whole county as a consideration. So How that gets done though, I guess we'll need to look into it. On the language aspect, I was wondering if the board would like, I would have interest in there being something that says the estimated cost to add 2 supervisors to Warren County is $100,000 annually. So the voters know that, or they understand what it's gonna cost.
And I believe that has been added to that language. I mean, that in different elections, that's been added to that language. So
Oh, it
that
has
certainly,
been?
yes,
Okay.
so it certainly can be considered.
Okay.
I'm fine with option 2, but I do think that the board, if we vote on that, I'd kind of like to have this board figure out, at least the majority of this board figure out under which plan we'd like to go. Because while I generally agree with you, Darren, that I like at large, because then you're sort of beholden to, or maybe more interested to entertain a phone call from someone outside of your district, if you will. The issue with that Supervisor McIntyre has brought up a couple times, and I agree with her too, is that you could have a scenario with 5 at large where 3 of them come from Indianola and 2 come from Norwalk, or 3 come from Norwalk and 2 come from Indianola, and then while you're right, everyone would be in your district because you have a countywide district. In practicality, if you're reining in the votes from Norwalk or Indianola or Carlisle, I'm not so sure that that's gonna be impactful for every future board member. Not saying me or you or Crystal, but I'm just saying that would be the problem that I would probably prefer to have. If it's 50,000, it'll be more than 50, but if it was 10, 10, 10, that maybe makes some sense. And I think honestly, you might be able to find a scenario where if the lines were drawn appropriately, each of those 5, or at least 4 of the 5, and maybe 5 of the 5 could have some rural and incorporated areas, which I think is important. Because honestly, I think part of the issue of Warren County's past that maybe hasn't always sit well with everyone in the county is that the Indianola district has been effectively Indianola. Because when Warren County wasn't 50,000, but it was 30,000, and Indianola had 10. Well, that was the district. And you get one person that has very little gravel and very little rural, and I'm just not positive that that going forward is the best for the county. I think it'd be better to have a little mixture of both.
Yeah, I totally agree, totally see.
So I would kind of prefer Plan 3, but I'd like to get board confirmation on that's acceptable. And then how it's worded, I don't care. I told the board and I told the public earlier that I'm not going to bat for this. I'm not gonna go lead the charge and hold rallies and send out a whole bunch of stuff. If people in the county wanna go to 5, and there are some that very much do, I mean, those people exist. I hear from them. But if that's what the voters and the 50,000 people who live here think's best, then great. If they don't, then great. I am okay either way. I'm just giving people the option to vote for the sort of government that they want at a local level. If that's what they choose, awesome. If not, fine.
Yeah.
I don't really care.
Yeah, could be on you, who knows? I mean, I know the leadership here in Indianola, some of the people that I communicate with are 4 or 5 members. Like, they are so adamant that that's gonna make everything.
I've heard it from both sides.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I just finally threw up my hands and said, you all pick. Pick what you want.
But the people decide that, when you said that like 2 months ago, it's
It's
like,
as simple as
It was pretty.
that's the smartest thing I've heard so far.
It's as simple as it gets.
Yeah.
If this is what you want, vote yes.
Yeah.
If this is not what you want, vote no. I'm fine either way.
Yep.
I suppose the board is. So,
Yep.
but I do think that having equal number of people makes sense in that if it's carved up right under Plan 3, then I think you can get less incorporated only, because because I don't think that that's fair. I think Crystal's argument's legit.
Yeah.
I mean, your district's almost all incorporated in Enola. And my district is comprised of a whole lot of Norwalk and Cumming, and then some rural. But ultimately, if I made everyone in my district who lives in the rural zone upset, but I made everyone who lived in the city happy, and I wanted to keep running for this position indefinitely, sign me up. I'm a winner every time. It doesn't really matter. I mean, there's just, by numbers, there's way more people in the city. So I think that it would make sense to say, okay, maybe Enola, you get sort of split in half and you get some rural. And okay, Norwalk, you get some of Norwalk or some of Cumming in Norwalk, and then you get a whole bunch of rural. And so that you get your 10,000 people, you get a better mixture of people. So then you're gonna listen to folks that are both in the city and in the county, so.
I think that sounds good. That sounds good.
Okay. Are you guys both okay with number 2?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And adding the cost.
Estimated
Very
cost.
good.
I'm fine with that too. I'm not trying to hide anything. I mean, it's gonna cost more. There's some benefit, like I told everyone else earlier, in my mind, there's some benefit to going to 5. There's some cost to going to 5, and there's some benefit to going to 5. And it's how you value things. I don't know. But I'm fine with letting people decide. I'm fine with option 2 and adding the estimated cost. That probably makes it a little harder to succeed, but I mean, it's just the truth, so it's fine. And then those that are super eager to go to 5, they can carry the water on it and go to work.
Yeah.
And those that are against it can go to work, and the voters will say what they want to say.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we got a consensus. Do we need to take action on that?
That's up to you. You can take action now, you can wait until we can find more information out about the
Yeah.
costs.
Can we take action in this meeting?
You can, yeah. Well, yes, yeah, you're in a regular
This is a
special meeting, so
Oh,
you
this
can.
is special meeting.
Mhm.
We can hold tight. We can get the numbers on what 2 additional supervisors look like financially, that's fine. And then we can add that to the language of number 2 and then put it on a regular meeting and vote on it.
Yes.
And again, I don't even know. I wouldn't take a bet one way or the other. I don't know.
And also see if we can add the plan.
Sure. Yeah. That we can have plan 3.
I'm sure it couldn't be the same issue on the ballot, but it obviously it can be on the same ballot.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think you give people as much information as possible and let them choose what they want. And I'm never gonna feel bad about that at the end of the decision.
Exactly.
If they say no, they say no. Okay. If they say yes, they say yes. Okay. All right. Then on number 2.
That's a definite in the middle.
I know the inner workings of my thought process on that one. All right, number 3, consider the permanent easement for the Great Western Trail with possible action.
At this point, I would like to suggest that you table this. We are still working on the language for the easement. We're working with the city of West Des Moines and with conservation and trying to get the language all put together. We started this process last week, but it's just taking a little bit of time. We also want to, allow the conservation board to approve the easement on their part, and then we can bring it to the Board of Supervisors. So I'm hoping by Tuesday it'll be on that agenda for the board to either accept or reject.
Generally going in the right direction, Don.
Yes, we had a meeting last week, we got everybody together, the city of West Des Moines, conservation and attorney's office, and we've come to an agreement that an easement is the best option rather than the county surrendering property, which you all had said you were not willing to do anyway, the trail property. So that's the easement. It's going Adam Street and West Des Moines is going to cross the trail, and they're going to, the plan is to connect the trail to the intersection of Adams and Veterans Parkway connect. So the trail will go through that area. I'll get back to you with a completed document hopefully by Tuesday.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, number 4 on our agenda today is discuss dispatch comp time and possible action. This is a cleanup from our last regular meeting where we discussed and had a presentation on comp time. We had a couple options. I see our sheriffs here. I see some from dispatches here as well. I'm not sure if the board's given that a whole lot of thought, but I just don't like to have loose ends. And so I'd like to see if we can come to a resolution today on what we want to do with comp time. And either one of you can present first, and hopefully we hear from you both.
I'm not sure, I guess, where the board is on comp time, but something that, as you go into consideration of it, dispatch right now, you know, they're the only division within the sheriff's office that generates mandatory overtime for the use of comp time. I know in previous meetings, it's been discussed the amount of overtime we have when you weigh what they're giving vacation and then additional time off for comp time. Currently, you know, we've got 3 on-call dispatchers that are going through their training. They're at their certification schools this week. In the future, if we can get around to adding full-time, adding those on-call to full-time, if that's something that could be considered, that would, I think it should be weighted on the decision of the board with comp time, because at that point, although it gives many other benefits to add that staff, it also affects, I think, the comp time and puts dispatchers in more of a realm of like what our deputies are, what our jail staff is, as to where now, with the use of a day of comp time or a day of vacation, it's not generating mandatory overtime for the office. Just something I think to consider.
And how many hours of comp time, Sheriff, did the deputies get? Or can they build up?
Currently, right now, they're allowed 1 week, which, given the last negotiations and the change of scheduling that was done since the negotiations, they're currently allowed 54. I think one of their work weeks now is, given the schedule, floats just a little higher, but they're given 54 hours of comp time. A dispatcher's work week would be 48 hours.
And the dispatchers, I'm just off the cuff, trying to remember from our last meeting, what was the request from the dispatch? How many hours?
It was 96, and the only basis on that was because the regular county employee handbook granted a non-union county employee 80 hours of comp time for a year, so we based it off of 2 weeks. 2 weeks for a regular employee would be 80 hours, 2 weeks for us would be 96.
So by my math, I've got a couple of different options. 54, 96, 2 weeks at 40, 80, or something in between 96 and 54. You add them up, divide by 2. What is that, 106, 150, 75. So 54, 75, 80, or 96. I mean, those would be my logical options to fall for comp time dispatch. And I welcome your thoughts.
Comp time is just it's a new concept for me. You know, I came from I have different experiences. So just learning what comp time is and what that benefit is for Warren County and its employees has been just interesting. I feel like, I mean, backing way up a little bit, Aaron, the comp time is an additional benefit to overtime. It's when you look at just in Warren County employees as a whole and their benefit package, you know, I feel like the benefits are really strong here. And there's a union contract in place with our dispatchers. So we meet, you know, we're required to negotiate that contract on a basis. So when you, it's odd, like when I was in the school district, we met the terms of the contract, and it was a tough negotiation. And the union is a very powerful entity that has a lot of negotiating power. So it seems odd to me in this situation, it seems like an outlier that, you know, we're providing a benefit that isn't that wasn't even asked for by the union or isn't in the union contract. So for me, you know, do we want to take care of our dispatchers, and has it been, you know, a difficult job? It is a critical job for Warren County. You know, that's I mean, because you're such a valuable entity of Warren County, that's the only reason that I would think about, you know, putting in a comp time provision. But it's odd just structurally how it's set up here, to me, and just my living amount of experience. So those are my thoughts.
Why wasn't it negotiated for?
It's been an oversight in writing, just a technicality that's been skipped over because we always had it. So we never focused on it to make sure it was there. It was just past practices. We've always been allowed comp time just like everybody else was. So we didn't technically like look specifically for the verbiage or make sure it was there. And obviously just an oversight.
Historically, how many hours of comp time was acceptable in the past?
That's the problem. We didn't have a cap, so some people absolutely took advantage of it. And, you know, we had one time within the last year an employee who had over 270 hours of comp time, which obviously is very fiscally irresponsible. We can't do that. So we understand and appreciate and respect that there needs to be a cap. And honestly, everybody who had more than what we were presenting, the 96, everybody who has had more than that on the books has been working to get it down to that amount. Any time off that they've used recently in the last, let's say, 3-4 months has been taken as comp time versus vacation, to try to get it down to where it's manageable, whether it's 96 or 80 or, you know, whatever it might be. And that's, we all understand and know that it needs to be capped if it's allowed at all.
I appreciate that. I mean, that's taking some initiative on your own part for something that just, with the structure of dispatch where it's at and how many people are there and how you're already busy, I mean, it would be irresponsible and really counterproductive for the county to say, hey, I've got, you know, 125 hours of comp time, so let's go get some time and a half. And I mean, it's ripe for problems. So I do think that we need to have some sort of a structure in place. I'm not positive still yet what that looks like. Off the cuff, coupling dispatch with the comp time provided to the deputies makes some sense to me. Then again, having 2 weeks makes some sense to me. I mean, I see both, but I'm eager to hear what Crystal thinks and Darren thinks. But I do want to have some sort of a limit, because I think that having 200 hours of comp time where you're paying time and a half to not be here when we're already thin-staffed, that is not a recipe for success. And it's punitive on the budget.
In the past, we've always defaulted to county policy. If it is not specifically addressed in union contracts, and our county policy is at 80 hours comp time. So I would like to have that, so that we don't open up the contract and have the risk of other things being changed at the same time. So I think that's pretty much where we're at. But I have 2 other too.
So dispatch is where we're gonna have to spend some money. Like, we're gonna have to build up dispatch and get more employees, and a manager or whatever, you know, whatever the structure is, it's gonna be more expensive. And I'm all for, you know, doing whatever it takes to get dispatch to a level where our people are happy and that there's a good environment there and good culture and good leadership. And I'm all for that, because it's so critical. Like, what you do is so important and so valuable to our county. So, but what I think I'm hearing is, you know, the more comp time we're paying out, the less full-time employees we can have, because ultimately whoever's running this budget, which is Joe, has to, you know, proportion the numbers to where the needs are. So that, you know, if this comes down to 80 hours of comp time per employee, and only one more full-time employee, or only maybe no full-time employees, like, does this generate, you know, if we limit comp time, and under this current budget, I know that's true, and now in the future, we can do whatever we want to do. But right now, I'd like to see dispatch get some needed resources and meet, like as soon, like in my world, we would be hiring full-time dispatchers tomorrow or next week or whatever to get this to where it needs to be. And can we do that? So I think the comp time relates to a lot of things, just like any budget does. So, you know, you can, I'll agree with anything, you know, I'll agree with the 80 hours or the 56 hours or whatever, but I would prefer to make the priority, making somebody full-time. Like, let's get some more resources where they need to be to give these guys time to train and, you know, make it workable, where every minute isn't dire and you feel like you gotta come to work every single time. There's no time to train, no time to regroup, no time to really examine how to make our dispatch better. You guys are just all in all the time. If there's a way to fix that part of it, that would be nice. Immediately, like as soon as we can.
As far as the budget aspect goes, that's directly dependent upon if we hire more full-time staff. And the reason I say that is because where dispatch is unique in the comp time is if we have a night where we've got 4 or 5 deputies out in an overlap of shifts, you know, say we have 3 evening cars and we've got 2 overnight cars. There's a window where we may have 4 or 5 out. If 2 of them or 1 of them chooses to take comp time at that point and they leave, it doesn't affect the budget from a monetary standpoint in the respect that I don't have to call somebody else out at an overtime rate. A few years ago, dispatches, as their sheer office layout changed, we staffed it with 2 people all the time, which it does need to be with the concerns of the rushing and break and other things. And that's the concern with the comp time is that if Chrissy is gone, my only option is to put somebody there at an overtime rate. This is where I circle back to the adding of the staff. If we have a 3rd dispatcher there, then she wants to take off 4 or 5 hours of comp time, okay, we can. It's not optimal with other certifications that I think everybody in many conversations have hoped that we achieve with our dispatch, but we can't run with 2 dispatchers. That doesn't generate more overtime. So I think if we're looking at like 2 weeks, and the addition of staff, we can crunch some numbers and get you some very real scenarios with the addition of 1, with the addition of 2, with the addition of 3. Obviously adding 3, that's 1 per shift. That's kind of, at least going forward right now, the magic number, but that also allows, it will reduce overtime. The only overtime we absolutely cannot get away from is any contract with a holiday. If you work a holiday under the union contract, it's overtime period.
And I don't have any issue whatsoever with our dispatch receiving time and a half for holidays. I enjoy spending the holidays with my family. I suspect they do too. And if they're not, I want to pay them well.
Correct.
What I don't like is how many hours of a normal month that certain individuals in dispatch are pulling time and a half because of the system that they're under. That's going to get fixed by a couple things. 1 is limiting some comp time, and 2 is adding some full-time folks to the mix, because my goal is, unless it's a holiday or some extra circumstances, but I don't want to see 35% of the hours worked as OT. That's not what folks signed up for. That's not what the taxpayers signed up for. It's a valuable job. I appreciate it, but I don't need to pay
You don't
time.
want to work either, I'm gonna be honest.
I know, and it's, some of them don't, some of them maybe do, but we're only gonna fix it by addressing both prongs of that.
And
that's
this
it.
first budget year for us, in all fairness, that's exactly what we're working to reduce when we went out with, you know, I think whether the contract does or doesn't address it, it depends on how you want to read it. There is a section in there that discusses exactly how dispatch can accrue comp time. It doesn't say it's limited to that. And I will agree that under past practices, allowing people to bank hours has reduced the amount of actual money going around. But now that we're to where everybody has these banks built up, they're using it and it's time to pay for it. you know, like this first year, as we reduce those overtime, as we reduce those comp hours, we're paying for it. The banks are coming down, the accruals are coming down, absolutely, but we're paying for it. The elimination of comp time, I mean, it has been past practice, but like I said, that is, I think, if the board would like, I can present them, give me 7 to 10 days, we can get you some scenarios where, okay, the addition of 3 employees would generate X amount extra to the budget, but could be used to reduce overtime by Y amount. And I truly think you see, after we get through the year and a half of getting the comp banks down, getting the people trained, getting them ready to be a second chair or a third chair, you're gonna see it pay off in year and a half, 2 years. It's not gonna be next month, it's not gonna be October, but you will see it come down. You will see, as there are way more, I think you'll see, and I mean this respectfully too, because they work a lot of hours, but I think you'll see attitudes improve, simply because it is a lot of hours to spend in that room. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's benefits to both sides, and I can definitely get you.
They'll miss out on some overtime pay, but honestly, if you're there for, you know, a third of your hours are overtime, like, it's burnout, Bill. Like, that's what's gonna happen. That's probably what's been happening. I think you gotta take both on, but
And
what's the number, Chrissy? I mean, I know you're at 96. I know we can do whatever. I'm honestly between 80 and 75. Taking the 2 and divided by 2 at 75 would be fine. Going to 80 is fine. 96 seems a bit generous.
Yeah, absolutely. In 2 weeks, you know, 80 hours is, you know,
For something that's not written in there in the first
Yeah.
place, I think 75 or 80 probably it would be acceptable.
right.
But what's your take? I mean, do you think that your colleagues are going to be okay with either of those options?
I mean, I think right now, and I hate to speak for everyone, but you know, I honestly think that right now, given that we have the ability to comp nothing but a holiday, and we're working a ton of hours right now, and we did burn our banks down. I think I have 2 hours of comp time, trying to be respectful of the scenario, of the situation, you know. But going forward, you know, my coworkers in the jail, my coworkers that are deputies, you know, them having a week on the books, you know, it's kind of like, you know, that'd be nice, a little bit of a security, a little bit of cushion. You know, something comes up, we work 6 days a week, 3 days off, so a random Thursday, I have a, you know, I don't even know, I can't give you a good scenario, but a family member needs a ride somewhere or whatever, I ask to comp off 2 hours, you know, something like that. I don't have it, you know. So it's just to have that little bit of security, a little bit of cushion, not asking for, you know, I don't expect to be able to take months off before I retire and get paid for it. I mean, that's not feasible, not responsible, not even expected, you know, but just to be able to comp some, especially given right now the number of hours that we are working, it's a little bit of a thank you almost to have a little bit of grace to be able to do that.
Thank you for that. I appreciate your insight. I'm fine with 75 or 80. Chris, you're at 80. Darren?
I don't know. What I heard from Joe is to get a full, he'd like to look at, you'd like to look at the comp time versus getting how many employees. So if we say it's 80 hours of comp time, but that limits us to hiring another full-time employee for this year's budget.
I think that would be, I guess, where I'm coming from on that is I can give you, like I said, it'd take a couple days to go crunch some numbers, but I can give you because the thing is if we say, okay, we're gonna give 80 hours, but only hire one. Or if we're gonna do 80 hours and not hire any, okay, well, really then we're kind of hovering right where we're at right now. The point of adding the 3 full-time, and if you wanted to do 80 or 96 hours, and there's been talk of, okay, do we cap it per calendar year or fiscal year, or is it just you can't exceed 80 and it's revolving? So if you have 80, use 10, can you accumulate 10 more and still use that? So there's that discussion to be had as well. Where I'm coming from is I think with the addition of 3 dispatchers, 1 per shift, when they're up and running, comp time, I honestly think would be irrelevant. I really don't feel that comp time would generate a dime of overtime. The only point we would have to be cautious on, and this can be a policy thing, as once this is decided, how do we rate holiday vacations? we could stand to lose one or two dispatchers on a holiday, but maybe we keep the limit to 2 on a holiday, because now you can't have 5 dispatchers off on a holiday and then call in 5 more and have them work a holiday at that time.
Right.
That defeats the
In
purpose.
past practice, I mean, like years and years and years, when I first started here, under different administration, it was that
One person off on a holiday.
1% of a holiday, and basically you couldn't create overtime on a holiday.
Correct.
If you had enough people that were off, you couldn't have enough people off that would create overtime on a holiday.
And in essence, given
That
our
makes sense.
manpower requirements for dispatch right now, that's what, I mean, you take Chrissy and glad we have her. But she works a lot of her days off. The point of vacation, the point
I'm
of
supposed
time
to be
off,
off today.
the point of time off is to be away from work. You don't come in and work your 4 day or your 3 days off to take your week's vacation, then you come back and work your 3 days off because somebody, the point is to be gone for an extended period of time. That's the spirit of the vacation. By adding 3 staff, and if we wanted to go with 80 hours, 96 hours, 54 hours, whatever the board would decide and the union would agree to, those costs can be mitigated to nothing with the additional staff, because now I'm not required to have another body in there at time and a half.
So it's not dependent upon our decision on the comp time.
Yeah.
The staff decisions.
In short, yes.
It's a different scenario. I'm fine with 82, Crystal, you've got 2 votes on that. I don't mind it. I think, I want to just give them clarity so that we don't have unlimited banks. I will
I
say.
think that some of the opportunities we could have, if we were able to get more dispatchers, would be a different schedule, which would allow us, right now, or like I said, 6 and 3, which gives us 1 weekend off a month. A 6 and 3, a different schedule, whether you do a 3-2 like Firestone does, something like that. You're off every other weekend, you can do a little more planning, and you wouldn't actually probably take as much vacation or take as many days off as you do now,
But
because,
that's a contract issue.
yeah, it is, it's just for information, yeah.
Do we have additional considerations on the 80? Because we could say 2 or 3 of us vote for 80 and that passes and we set it at 80. But I'm not sure that answers all of the questions about if you use some, can you get some back? I mean, do we need to think that out further?
In essence, if.
Because what I don't wanna have is the ambiguity that dispatch has had before where, well, the board said 80, and then now we have 5 different opinions on what 80 means
Yep.
and how they can use it or how they can theoretically benefit from it or not, I mean, whatever, if we're gonna do it, let's make a hard and fast rule, here's the rule. There's no questions to be asked here, this is what you're gonna do. And so I'm not positive that just saying 80 checks all the boxes
No, I
for
agree.
those other questions. And I wanna make sure that if we do it, let's just do it all, we can do it in the next meeting, that's fine. But I'm fine with 80 in the spirit of 80, but I wanna make sure that we're addressing what does 80 really mean?
Yeah, 'cause
So that there's no questions.
If there's not a hard limit set, and it doesn't matter if you set 20 or 300.
If we can reload it.
If you can reload it, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. That's where there needs to be a limit per fiscal year. That can be a budgetable number percentage. Hey, there's X amount of weeks of vacation, X amount of weeks of potential accrued comp time.
Mhm.
This is what it's gonna cost to cover.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, if there's additional staff that's added, the time off, whether it's vacation, it reduces. So.
I think putting that caveat in would be important, and to say if additional staff are hired, comp time goes down. That would
If it can be
address that.
reloaded, we have to define if it can be reloaded or
That's
not.
Right.
correct, yes.
And if it can't be reloaded, then the number of hours of comp time per critical, if it can be reloaded, doesn't matter.
Yes,
Right,
correct.
and that's what one discussion that we've had kind of amongst ourselves was, are you allowed to, let's say if it's 80. So from July 1st to June 30th, I can use up to 80 hours of comp time. And I might have, on June 30th, I might have used, 54 hours of comp time throughout that year, but I might have another, 60 still in my bank. But I can still only use 80 in a year, if that makes sense.
Okay.
That's easy
You can
enough for us to
recruit up
track.
to and only use 80 in a year. So you can always have 80 in your bank, but you can only always use 80 in the fiscal year, if that would make sense.
I would be agreeable to that.
So you can.
I just think
have up to
that, I
80.
think that that's budgetable.
Right,
Yeah.
because you can still only use 2
What's
weeks.
not
within a
budgeable
year.
to me or makes it a lot harder is number that can float
So if I
up
go
to 200
tomorrow-
and
yeah.
then keep building it
If I
back
go
up
tomorrow and I
on
have 80
OT.
hours in my bank that you have to pay me out, that's only 8 hours, but if I have 270 in my bank, but I've only used, 5, you have to pay me out all those 270, or do you have to pay me 70? I don't know. But yeah, if you can only have up to 80, you can only use 80 within that year, then you're only at 80.
Would it be okay for Joe to write a policy?
Yeah.
Or Joe, can you write a 2-sentence, 3-sentence policy on this, make sure Chrissy's okay with it, and then bring it to the board for
Sure,
us to
we
look
can
at?
absolutely do that. I'm not sure how that gets into the contract.
It's just our, like.
Well, it's our position, and then the
Policy.
union's going to take it or leave it. I
Sure,
mean,
sure.
right now, the union's literally at 0.
Right.
Yep.
And if we tell the union, show me where in the policy you accrue comp time, they're gonna say, I don't know,
I
or
can
it's
definitely
not
do that.
there. So that's the other approach. I'm guessing they're gonna be somewhat flexible with it, but I sort of like 80, I sort of like having a bank of 80 to be used in a fiscal calendar year, use it or lose it. And I think that's an equitable starting point
Yep.
with dispatch.
Because-
And then if the union wants to negotiate for a future contract thereafter,
My,
then fine. we'll
my
look at it.
caution on this would be, if we do, I think a policy like that would have to be something to where you're allowed to bank up to X amount of hours. And if not, then it's paid out. Because with comp time, it's not like vacation in the essence, that these are hours that have been worked. This is earned money. They have to be paid for that money. So I don't know if we can take the use it or lose it approach simply because this is time that they put in.
What if you don't, not say lose it, but you could carry it over, but you can still never have more than 80, so you wouldn't have to pay out 2 weeks every year.
But then we still get on the essence of if you quit or leave, depart the company with the county, then I still have to come up with, like we have one dispatcher that had almost 260 hours of comp time. And that's a hit to the budget when you're talking about paying out
They don't have more
vacation.
than 80.
True, well, but what you're saying is you can accrue more.
No.
You just can't use more than 80.
No.
That's the way I understood it.
No, I'm saying you can only accrue ever up to 80. You
Up
can
to
never have
80,
more than
sure.
80.
Yeah.
And if you use, so it's.
What I would like to see, and I understand this is the agreement between the county and the union. And then because we've discussed 80, I'm gonna use 80 hours, whether it be 54, whether it be 10, whether it be whatever. Is once your bank account, once your comp account reaches 80 hours, regardless of whether you used 2 hours that fiscal year or 40, that's your cap. On a separate spreadsheet, we can keep track of how many dispatchers, and I'll use hers when she's sitting here. If she were to use 40 hours 1 week, we can document it on a spreadsheet that we keep in-house, and then we would know, okay, Chrissy Matthews has 40 hours of comp time left until June 30th of this next year. Now, she can never carry more than 80 on the book, as far as her accrual, and then she would be able to have 40 left usable for this year. Because in their defense, a lot of their ability to bank comp hours comes right during the split of the fiscal year. I mean, from June to August, you got a month one side, 2 months the other side, where heavy vacation is used, and that's where a lot of them try to bank it. So we could figure something out, and we definitely can write and have that to the board if they want to.
Does it even have to go in the contract? I mean, because it's not addressed now, couldn't it just be a Warren County
Like, is
policy?
it
All
just
dispatchers?
an agreement between the?
We talked about that.
We did talk about it, I don't know, and we could reach out to the union rep. The only thing is with the language in there about how dispatch may be allowed to accrue compensatory time on a holiday. That's where it limits, whether it was an oversight or what, that's where it limits dispatch's ability. And when we talked about reducing overtime, right now we set about 35 weeks of vacation that we have to cover overtime.
Okay, so
If
that
we give
needs to
each-
be changed.
If we give each dispatcher essentially two additional weeks, well, that's 18 more weeks. So that means we need to budget for, 30 or 53 weeks of overtime, roughly. It's not that it can't be budgeted for, it's just that gives me a hard number to give you guys a hard number. This is what it is. So, and that's, I mean, like I said in the first meeting, or 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, it's irrelevant to me if the board wants to approve a week, 2 weeks, unlimited. I need both sides to understand that I'm the one that's got to run the budget, so it's got to be paid for by somebody.
So I think we're okay with 80. I think we'd like a little clarification on how you want to do it. I prefer your method there, Joe, on up to 80 in a year, and you can't accrue more than 80. easier to budget.
Yep.
So if you wanna write something to that
Yeah.
effect.
Well, we're in the middle of fair moon, so probably give me,
Yeah, that's fine.
probably give me a week to 10 days, it's busy for me,
That's fine. We can do it in August.
Would the board
Either a
prefer
special
that-
or whatever.
Would the board prefer that I present it to John, or I can email three a copy? How would you prefer I deliver that to you guys?
Email's fine.
Yeah.
Email's fine with me.
Okay, good.
And then we'll just have to put it on the.
Then we'll
agenda.
review it, then we'll put it on an agenda, and we'll make dispatch well aware so that they can come as well to it. But that's sort of, Chrissy, where I think the board's at. Is
That
the
sounds
80.
good, no, I appreciate your consideration, thank you.
Okay. And then last on our first meeting agenda is appoint ARPA work group.
So that's the American Rescue Plan Act. And whether you appoint it today, but just to keep it on your radar that we probably want to appoint soon. Just for some of the people, you know, I've heard from the engineer, conservation, and the attorney's office so far. Just myself, of people that are interested in being on. So, and a little update on the American Rescue Plan Act. We got the SAM's registration all updated, so the funds have been re-requested. We requested once. It came back to me and then got all fixed and it's been requested again. So, once that gets approved, I think it just takes a couple of weeks, it's my understanding, for us to actually get the funds. So, Julie's aware of where it's gonna go and everything.
Thank you, Megan. So let's talk about that a little bit. How many folks do you want on that work group?
I think we had talked about it in a previous board meeting, and I think we came up with 10.
12, 10?
Yeah.
So one from the engineer, one from conservation, one from the attorney's office,
We talked about the sheriff.
one from the sheriff's office. And then so we have 6 people plus the board. How-
We don't need to be on it. I mean, they can bring recommendations to
Okay.
us. I mean, that's my understanding of the way it should be. I am not interested in sitting on another board right now.
Okay.
But, I know we had talked about people from the public. And I like to see the mayors. I don't know, that would be pick and choose if we're limiting it to 12.
If we got 10, we've got 6 people. And I do
did a
want.
request from the pub, actually, too, sorry.
What do you
Okay,
get?
great.
Somebody For Our Kids, and,
Oh, I remember.
she.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yep.
I wrote some thoughts down while Mr. Ludwig was giving his presentation. I know that this is gonna open up a can of worms for a lot of people. Oh, the county has money, let's petition them to do our pet project. I have my personal values also in play here, where I feel government isn't in the business of funding private ventures. Now, I know we help with things and we get things set up for us, for projects like this, I understand, but for the most part, I'm not interested in that. I'm not saying that kids aren't a wonderful thing, but right now we don't have those guidelines. And I know it would be great to have all these wonderful ideas, but, I don't know, that's just my feeling that I wanna limit this as much as possible. And I know it's not someone you are advocating for, it's just someone that sent us an email. But I just don't want it to get carried away. I know you guys don't care.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I said it earlier in the meeting, I said it again today. I have issues with just the whole raining printed money from the federal government down on states and counties. Like, we don't have the money. Like, not we, the federal government doesn't have
Exactly.
the money. We are printing it, and that, as a non-economist, but someone who took econ in high school and college, like, that does lead to inflation. So it's not,
Absolutely.
it's not free
Mhm.
to have the federal government say, hey, we're gonna print another $5 trillion and go spread it out, go do some good stuff. But on the other hand, that's gonna happen no matter what I think, or no matter how I want it to be, it's gonna happen. So,
But
from,
do we have to accept that money? I know there's at least one other county that said no, that they didn't want it. Now, it could have been a smaller county that got next to nothing, I don't know. But I'm just saying, it does make it very hard for someone that feels the exact same you do about inflation and.
it's the way I
offering it.
feel about it,
Yeah.
but I can assure you, if Polk County's getting $90 million, Polk County's gonna spend $90 million.
Yes.
And most of these people, just like how many people got a stimulus check? Did anyone return it? I mean, I don't know.
Some people are making it.
My guess is not very many.
So-
Most people used it on whatever you all used it on. And so my point is, I'm inclined to do as the most amount of good for our county over a long period of time with this, because it's gonna come either way. And if the county says no thanks, everyone else is going to say yes please, and they're going to make some improvements to their county. But what I want to see out of it is improvements to the county that then generate a return. A return that then can be used for secondary roads and for a budget. And so I want to get a return on investment. And that's not going to be seen on, let's build, 300 houses. I mean, you'd get some valuation, I mean, you'd get
Right.
some.
Right.
But that's not a very high return on investment. Getting an Amazon distribution center, however, or an Apple or a Facebook data center like Bondurant has. I just went up fishing and I took, I don't know, that Marshalltown Highway, and I drove by all those massive buildings. Altoona is swimming in cash. I mean, it's like Scrooge McDuck in his money vault. That's what those folks have to do. And I'm like, that'd be nice. At budget time, we're like, I don't know, should we give Kayakota 75 or 80 this year?
Right.
I'd like to have a return on investment. And so, as much as I maybe don't love the whole concept of helicopter cash from the feds, I want to use it wisely so that in the future, we have some appropriate growth for it. And I'm not saying it's resident, I'm not saying it's anything
Right,
that we
right.
saw, but I think that
But
we
those
need
are
to
the
be,
seeds.
we need to
Right.
be thinking hardcore about what we want to do. And I just think that you're gonna get the best bang for the buck somewhere on Highway 5 between Cumming and Carlisle. And maybe something in Enola, I don't know, or maybe something with broadband or something that makes people's lives better that we can actually tangibly look at. I don't even know what the guidelines are yet, but I know sewer works. And sewer is usually a pretty big obstacle for development.
And in the work session, I'll be bringing up something that the county actually can benefit from. Not huge return, but it is something that conservation and engineering needs.
Sure.
So how do we want to put this committee together now?
So we got 4 folks internally from engineer, conservation, attorney, and sheriff. If
These are
sheriff,
the budget people, that's.
and
what-
they are. And ultimately, some of this, if we can have some, I mean, one of the things that I will say that I'm having a big TIF district from a county perspective doesn't help out a whole lot.
I know.
So I don't mind maybe dragging from some infrastructure out for a shovel-ready project or to get some area ready to go for an industrial site. I'm less inclined to say, hey, let's add 300 homes on a TIF district that doesn't help the schools or the
Exactly.
county very much. I'm not really inclined to do so. But those 4 and then 6 people, mayors, I'm fine with that. I mean, I don't know who else you want on it. Someone from the public, someone from a school district.
I think
maybe?
somebody from the public would be nice, someone from, yeah, I mean, I'd like a business, like someone that's running some businesses.
Do you want your zoning administrator on here if you're talking about
Yeah.
development,
Absolutely.
land use?
I do.
You know how to get a hold of somebody like that?
Is that maybe something you could use the dollars for, is the land use plan and the
Maybe.
zoning ordinance?
Oh, wonderful.
I don't know.
Yep.
We don't have the guidelines. guidelines, Lindsay, but if we could, I would torch the
That'd be
first
a thought.
250.
I mean, the thought.
It's a great thought. Basically, things that we're going to do in the future, no matter what, if we can have it legally work out through some COVID dollars, that would make a whole lot of sense.
And there's some guidelines out there, and I sent them out to the department, and if there's anyone else.
I don't know if our ordinance would be infrastructure or not, but I'm game for finding out.
But you know, a lot of his stuff is land use, or you know, a lot of that would be falling under land use, so, and an ordinance follows a land use, it is something to look into. Maybe we could look into that.
I don't think we have the guidelines yet, though, do we?
Oh, do we not?
We have,
We have some.
there are guidelines out there.
Are they
Yeah.
finalized?
There's an interim final rule, is what it's called.
Yeah.
Guideline.
You're on if you'd like it.
Maybe we should.
And then we have 5 more to go. I would have.
You had 6, you added 1, which makes
We
7.
had 10, we had 4, we just added zoning. Although I'm not sure that the sheriff wants to be on it.
It doesn't have, he can just be a representative from his office.
Sure. I'll happily sit on it too. I'd sign up for that. And then a couple 2 mayors and 2 or 3 mayors and 2 people from the county at large.
And I will say this person that emailed said specifically that where she works now, she gets enough funds from the state, so she's not looking for her.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yes,
What
she
was
was
the
just
purpose?
kind of, she's just saying she's worked with the county, and she said, I can bring my expertise to the table around issues and many more.
You know, maybe someone
It is-
from economic development should be on it too. They probably have a pretty good pulse on projects and things. I mean, people aren't calling me with their ideas of how they'd like to expand or grow, but they might call her.
That's a good-
But I still would like 1 or 2 just business-oriented folks from the county without any agenda or
Mhm.
projects of their own, or, hey, I happen to own 500 acres by Highway 5, I've got some great ideas for you. I mean, I don't mean that. But we've added zoning, Darren.
Yep.
And we're gonna add, if they'd like to, someone from the economic development team here in Warren County. Rachel, or, is it
Yeah, Rachel.
Rachel or a staff member. And I volunteered to sit on it too.
Okay.
And then a couple mayors and 1 or 2 people from the public, and that gets us to 10 to 11 or 12. I don't care what it is. I don't wanna go more than 12. Cause then it'll just be impossible to get everyone's
Exactly.
schedule to even align. We have troubles getting 3 or 4 people at the same place.
Maybe a rural mayor and a city mayor,
Rural mayor, city mayor, I like it.
and some business representative. I'm not sure.
So 2 mayors and a business rep. Anyone wanna locate some business rep?
I'll do that.
That's good.
Since I'll sit on it too, I will not do that.
Okay, fair enough.
Do you want mind reaching out to Rachel at Economic Development?
Sure.
Zoning's here and said yes. David or someone from his office would be great. Conservation's already indicated they'd be on it.
Yep.
Someone from the attorney's office said they'd be on it. Jamie or someone, or Don.
Doug,
Doug? Okay, Doug, got it. I just kept saying Don in my head, but it's usually Doug. And then sheriff, someone from the sheriff's office, if Joe wants to. If Joe doesn't want to or doesn't want to have someone there, I don't,
Yeah.
it's it's okay. That'd be one that like probably is not as impactful. So if he's not gung ho for that, then
I just
great.
didn't know
But he does make up a good chunk of the budget, so that makes sense.
what he might have in store in his mind, either with the jail or patrol, or, I don't know. And I don't know if the dollars would even.
So we've got one rural mayor, one larger city mayor.
How will they be selected then?
So of the rural mayors, I'd say that's Crystal's domain, whatever you like. Of the major city mayors, Mayor Pepper is sort of interim at this moment in time. I'd probably say Drew or Tom,
Yeah.
probably for one of the larger city ones would make sense, plus they're up on Highway 5.
Yep. I think
And
so.
then Darren, if you wanna get a business-oriented person from Indianola, that way Indianola can have sort of their say through their business-oriented person from Indianola.
Yeah, definitely.
And that way we have a little bit of parity between folks. And then Crystal, dealer's choice on rural mayor, I don't know who you'd like. Does that sort of work out as a general overview of the plan?
Sounds good.
Okay. If you would let me know on Rachel, Crystal, if you would let me know on rural mayor, I will talk to Drew and Tom this week and see if one of the two of them would be interested.
I did ask Drew back when we had talked about it,
Mhm.
so I know he's very interested in, so.
Oh, I think,
we were-
I think everyone's going to be interested.
Yeah. Just a matter of who.
Yeah, do the cities get money too, or just?
They do.
Mhm.
The cities do.
Yeah, the cities do too.
It's just sort of helping, and again, just like I kind of mentioned with Polk County, you know, if you want to get the most bang for your buck, sometimes you pull resources. And maybe there'll be an opportunity with a city that has some resources and a county and or two counties, and or now you've got a bigger pot to do a bigger project. That makes some sense to me. Like if, for example, if Carlisle, who I assume is getting some federal funding, and Polk County and Warren County wanted to find an area, sort of that second circle that was sitting on Highway 5 by some fields, and wanted to do some joint infrastructure project to bring an industrial park that would benefit all three entities, that's probably a little higher on my priority scale. Not that I want to share with folk, but
Yeah, and which counties can you sit in?
Warren. But I would happily use some, you can say that Aaron would happily use some Polk County resources to build a project in Warren every day of the week. So, I don't know. But maybe there's some city-county collaboration, I don't know, but we'll see. So I'll talk to those two mayors, and then if you'd let me know on whichever less than 4,000 city population mayor would like to join, that would be great. And with that, we're ready for our next meeting, I think. So let's adjourn this one. Second. Roll call, please.
Dick Cook,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
McIntyre.
Aye.
All right, this one, meeting is adjourned. Our next meeting
Okay.